Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast for founders, entrepreneurs, dreamers, and leaders navigating the journey of growth. In each episode, we get into the setbacks, the rebuilds, the pivots, and the lessons learned along the way. These are honest conversations with leaders who faced challenges head on and found success in business and in life. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Nick D'Ambrosio, founder and CEO of NOMADICS, a firm specializing in geospatial intelligence, data analytics, and defense engineering. He has spent nearly 2 decades helping public agencies, private organizations, and national defense teams use data to make faster and better decisions during times of complexity and crisis. For founders, his journey shows what it takes to evolve from a service-based business into a trusted intelligence partner supporting major national efforts, including disaster response and public health initiatives. This conversation explores how process thinking, technical depth, and disciplined execution can position a company to operate in high-stakes environments. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to get into this conversation with you. I've already recorded your whole bio, so our audience knows all about you. So let's get right into it. So you founded Nomadics in
Mhm.
2006 and evolved the company multiple times as markets and technologies changed. What did you have to let go of mentally or strategically in order to keep the company relevant for nearly two decades?
So I founded the company doing environmental and construction because that's what I liked to do. And that's what I was trained in doing. That's what all my degrees are in. And at the time in 2006, it was a builder's market here in New Jersey, a lot of residential development. The technology that I specialize in, environmental GIS, geographic information systems, was burgeoning at the time. And so the environmental and the haz waste, the construction, health and safety, remediation, permitting, due diligence, compliance. That's really what the company was founded on here in New Jersey, interfacing with the NJDEP, the Department of Environmental Protection. And as the company grew and evolved and changed, we really had to let that go for a litany of reasons. But we, for all intents and purposes, we're not an environmental company anymore. We're an engineering firm. And
Mm-hmm.
it is, although from time to time, some of our programs and projects do bring in that old skill set, for really and truly, we're not really an environmental company anymore. It is nice that once in a while I will get a phone call. Hey, Nick, I need your input on something, or can you take a look at this? And we are connected to DEP officials in the current administration, but it's that passion of mine. We don't do anymore. I get to do it from time to time, but we as a firm do not.
So how did you pivot from one type of industry and business into what you're in now?
It was a very slow, almost imperceptible change. We were environmental strictly and construction strictly from '06 to really 2012, where we landed our first Navy contract entirely on accident. We were picked up for a Navy EHS program, environmental health and safety, which was our bag, because we had been on the BP spill in 2010, Exxon spill in 2011, became government contractors, got our clearances, and were put into the government system. So a friend of mine doing a Navy project overseas said, Nick, I've got this EHS program tasking I don't know what to do with, but it sounds right up your alley. And I had known David for years. We'd worked together. And I said, oh, sure, why not? Environmental health and safety means something entirely different for the military than it does for we ecologists. And in reality, it actually meant battle space management, unmanned combat development, facilities construction, all overseas in active theater. And so when I arrived in Bahrain, thinking that I was going to be doing, facilities construction or hazardous waste remediation, no, I was actually in charge of unmanned combat development and geospatial battle space management. And I had no idea what any of this was, but I was told to figure it out. So it was entirely on accident. And because we became specialists in it, it was a relatively new area for the government. Me specifically, I was young and malleable. And so we just stuck with it. And over time, from 2012 to 2019, we kept accumulating more and more of that very specialized government work. And we were
Mhm.
balancing environmental and construction now with defense and engineering, and GIS played a role in both sides. And eventually those sliding bars just reversed. And in 2020, when COVID came along, we had a very nice, healthy balance between government, engineering, defense, GIS, and environmental and construction. COVID came by and wiped all of this out. There was no
Hmm.
building, nobody was acquiring property, no one was applying for anything, no one was going to work, so there was no reason to build anything. And so all of this work fell by the wayside, but we had a nice, healthy baseline of Navy work over here. And so we just pivoted everybody over here and just stuck with it. The Navy work then expanded into a lot of GIS work under Operation Warp Speed, CDC, HHS, DHS, the Navy NAV CO5 work continued to expand. We got into Army weapons prototyping, and then we've recently won our first Air Force program award. We have a lot of private sector support in GIS and engineering work. And so it just kind of
Hmm.
happened.
You operate in environments where credibility is everything: defense, government, crisis response. What does it actually take for a founder to build trust in industries where mistakes are not tolerated?
It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time and relationship development and, the ability to first off have a very thick skin because
Hmm.
you're going to get screamed at by people. It happens on a regular basis. And for years of doing health and safety and construction for the
Hmm.
government, you get accustomed to being screamed at. And I am not an intimidating guy. I'm 5'7", 200 pounds now, but at the time I was like buck 65, little white dude getting screamed at by people, 6, 9,000, and I'm screaming right back at them. And you eventually learn to A, not take things personally, but B, when you inevitably make a mistake, own up to it and come to Jesus with it immediately and do what you
Mm.
can to fix it. Nobody's 100% accurate all the time. It's physically impossible. But in the rare cases where you're wrong, you need to own up to it immediately and then provide a solution before it becomes actually problematic. More often than not, in the fistful of times I've been mistaken about something, I've gone to my CEO, reported it accordingly. The first thing they ask is, not thanks for reporting this, it's do you have a fix for it? You better have the right answer. Now, unless of
Mm.
course it's way outside of your control, you are making them aware that this is a thing that I can make recommendations on, but you have to act on it. And so credibility, it takes a lot of time. People do business with those that they know, like, and trust. And those relationships do not happen overnight to the point where, here we are 20 years in and we're getting our tasking. Some of our projects come in, if it's in the private sector, via text message. Nick, I need you to do blank. Here's your budget. Here's your deadline. Give me a proposal. Okay, Frank.
Mm.
And you only get that with time and persistence.
It's interesting because usually government projects have to go through an RFP process. So,
Well,
are
yeah.
you at the phase now where you do you still have to go through that RFP process in order to land the projects?
So the answer is yes. I was speaking more in the private sector aspect of it.
Okay.
Work that we're
Yeah.
doing for like Verizon, SHI, Google, Colliers, Tetra Tech, Mama. There's a lot more liberal approach with how things are awarded to us, especially if we've got like a master services agreement. Then it just comes out in tasking. But to get those, you have to have
Hmm.
performance in the relationship and so on. The government process is different. It's especially different right now. The current
Hmm.
administration has completely upended the traditional way of doing work with the government. And so this whipsaw approach has really put a damp on a lot of the interface that larger competitors of ours who've relied on legacy RFP bidding, best value, those internal relationships has sort of fallen by the wayside, or cracks in the system have formed that have allowed a small firm like us to fill in the gaps accordingly. Although
Hmm.
we still have to go through the same bidding process as they do, because we're smaller and we've got access to existing contract vehicles already. Our Seaport Next Generation Prime vehicle, our OTA, a couple of an omnibus, a Super 8.8 program. We've got the ability to direct if the customer needs something. We sort of lead them from behind. Okay, we can fix this problem. If you have the budget for it, this is the contract vehicle with which you can use. Two of our major programs for the Army specifically had to go through the normal RFP for the Federal Acquisition Regulations process. The issue with that is it became like an 18 to 20-month process. And as a small business, you can't wait that long.
Yeah.
And the government needs things done in a specific timeline. And so if they can't get these programs out the door, they're falling behind on the deliverables that they need. So the answer is it's yes across the board. We're very semper gumby, ever flexible. We approach things as the customer tells us to engage on.
Yeah, got it. So, how does a leader make decisions when the pressure is extremely high and the margins for error is small?
First off, with my executive team, it's a very round table approach. I'll crowdsource decision making because I don't know everything, and
Mm,
nobody should operate as an island for starters. My lieutenants are all specialists in their area, and although we are all growing and learning, there's a lot of knowledge base that we can rely on, if not immediately within our circle, then immediate trusted sources. Number one. Number two is that you can't get emotional about anything. You have to remain cognitive and go through the process accordingly. Third, if you're not able to source the answer or figure it out, I always recommend taking a step back, have a cup of coffee, go for a walk, play with your kids, do something else. And
hmm
I can't tell you how often the solution has come to me in the middle of the night. I have an 18-month-old who refuses to sleep through the night. So I'm up with him at least once, twice a night. Our 5-year-old is having nightmares from time to time. And so I'm awake. And, if I'm up with them for 20 minutes, I'm now fully lucid and working again. And I'll have an idea in the middle of the night of how to address something. So, first and foremost, I'm not always right. I'm rarely wrong, but I've sourced the right information from the right people, and that's I think is a big part of it. So, yeah, when the pressure is on, after a while, you just get kind of used to it, and when you're on vacation, you don't actually know what to do with yourself because you're used to being under the gun all the time.
Many founders struggle when their companies evolve beyond the original idea.
Yeah.
How did your identity as a founder change as Nomadics evolved from an environmental services firm into a digital intelligence and defense engineering company?
My role it always is captain of the ship. I'm always in the chair. It's
Hmm
really just the difference is what I talk to people about now, as opposed to environmental. Now I just talk about defense and engineering and so on. And what I've found is what I do now is just as confusing to the lay folks as it was 20 years ago. I mean, I can't tell you how often I tell people I'm in defense and they think I'm an attorney. And I just, sure, why not? So yeah, the role has pretty much remained the same. My staff, my customers, clients, everybody looks to me specifically as a fixed point in space and time. And that has seemed to work. I mean, I've led the company through recessions, COVID, impropriety by a former executive of mine, my divorce. I'm happily married now, but I got divorced years ago. Some deaths in the family. Like I've led this firm through a lot. So my role continues to be, the all things to all people, which is problematic on its own. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no, for sure. How can founders learn to operate effectively inside complex systems without becoming overwhelmed?
First off, I'm at the early stage. You're going to be all things to all people all the time because it
Hmm
is your company, and you have to be able to be really good at keeping 16,000 spinning plates all in the air spinning all the time. As you get bigger and get older and you evolve and get better, sooner or later, the things that you're stronger at will come out, and you really want to focus your attention on those skills. And you want to hire people smarter than you in the areas where you're weaker and deficient, and build a core team that is going to allow you to be as successful and responsive to the people that need your attention. And I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a finance guy. We have a 3-person finance team because what we do demands a lot of financial tracking and juggling and reporting. And I get questions all the time about X, Y, and Z in the finance. I'm like, nope, nope, nope. You go talk to them. Same thing
hmm
with IT, same thing with grants. And so it is really about learning as much as you can, as best as you can, as fast as you can, but being aware of what those deficiencies are and addressing them accordingly.
What does flexibility actually look like in practice when you are responsible for delivering mission critical outcomes?
It is very much a facade. There
A
is
facade?
no, there's no, there's this mystical friends and family of mine all think that because I'm a business owner, I've got I get to make my own schedule. Yes, I get to pick which 16 hours a day I want to work. Or, Nick, you don't have a boss. No, I've got the most bosses. Every client is a boss of mine. And the US
Mhm.
government is a boss of mine. And when it comes to this kind of mission critical work, I mean, the private sector is just as important as the
Mhm.
government. The work that we're doing in the private sector is 5G signal propagation and fiber optic urban outlay planning. And these things matter because they will be impacting people's lives. The work we were doing for COVID was very important because it was impacting people's healthcare and
Mhm.
actual lives. And so you get really good at doing a lot with a little if you prepare yourself mentally that this is how things are going to be. Listen, being a business owner is not for the faint of heart. It really is.
Mhm.
I would advocate that everybody try it at least once, just to say that they did it and to say this is not for me. I don't mean that you should leave your job right this second, start a company in underwater basket weaving. I'm saying if you have an idea, you have a passion, start something on the side. That way, you have it. Don't turn a hobby into a job because then the passion all flows out of it. I opened up my company to be a competitor against my former employer, specifically
Ah.
out of spite. I saw what they were
Revenge.
doing and I didn't like the way they were doing it. And I saw that the deficiencies, no, the services I was providing, they were deficient in and could exploit that deficiency for my benefit. It
Mhm.
worked.
What are the biggest misconceptions founders have about working with government agencies?
First off, that it is not easy. It is not something you can do overnight. It is not something that you are going to get rich from. And it is something that takes an exorbitant amount of patience and pushing. And you're dealing with a lot of personalities, a lot of rules and regulations, and you have to be prepared that it's going to end up in defeat. And
Mm.
my older brother, he has a very successful high end AV company, and asked me recently, okay, I want to start doing work for the government. And I laid out for him all the things he needs to do to just be compliant, to be in the room, to bid on the jobs against a bunch of other people. And he said, I am not doing any of that. And I said, you shouldn't. It is not a thing that you take lightly. I fell into it. I was completely did this by accident and stumbled my way forward. There wasn't a manual to follow. There wasn't a guidebook. There was nobody to take me by the hand and say, you need to do this, you need to do that. You just figure it out. And a lot
Mhm.
of it came from people, friends of mine on the inside saying, what do you mean you don't have this thing yet? Go get this thing so I can have you do this thing. So you got to go and get that thing. But you can't do that thing right now. You need this other thing first. But to get this other thing, you need to hire these people or pay these fees or file that paperwork. And oh, the gate's not open. It's only open 1 month out of every 7. And you have to, wait till the moon is in the ninth house and roll the chicken bones accordingly. And it's just
Yeah.
so it is not something to be taken lightly. And it is it's first off, it's very costly on your part. You cannot backbill the government for these costs in order to be compliant to do work for them in the first place. And a big part of it is you have to sort of be invited in and test bed something for the government in any capacity in a very small, safe, controlled way.
Mm.
That they basically give you the audition. If you don't screw it up, you might get another opportunity at something a little bit bigger. In our
Mm.
case, we happened to be in the room at the right time for the BP spill. I wasn't supposed to be there. A friend of mine was supposed to go, but she was married with kids. I was divorced with no kids. So they asked her to go. She said she couldn't, but sent me instead. And that was our big break 4 years after I
Mhm.
founded the company. And I threw myself into that work. And so, you were put through the government's JPass or DEERS, I can't remember which system it was. And now you're in the system. And then you're given temporary and incidental clearances. So you are a trusted entity and you've got now past performance. You've done work for these entities. And so you just build upon that. And this is not something, again, that happens overnight
Yeah.
without a lot of that past performance. And I mean, you need your DUNS number, your cage code, your SAM registration, your UID, your CMMC, excuse me, your insurance is up to snuff. Then you have to be audited, inspected. I mean, and then the project you could be going after could lose funding, or your sponsor or your customer could get hit by a bus or they decide to retire or just anything could go wrong. So it is a precarious engagement. And, from the outside looking in, people think, oh, this is a great thing. Yeah, it's great if you can get it,
For sure.
but because we're small, we are not 100% reliant on the government. Our
Right.
revenue is a 60-40 split, 40% from the private sector, 60% from the government sector. And that 60% is still broken up into federal defense, state, county, local, academic, and nonprofit. And so
Right.
we have got a good mix of revenue streams that come from a variety of different sources because the federal government could be shut down for 6 weeks and then they could reopen right before Thanksgiving and then nothing happens until January. So that's 3 months that you've lost doing work for the feds.
You were talking to me about like when you first started getting into these government projects. Has anything changed about the process, or is it exactly the same still?
Changes all the time. The one,
Really?
oh yes, the one constant is that there's always change.
Does the change mean more red tape or more flexibility?
It's sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other, sometimes it's both.
Yeah.
And a big question that we get a lot is how much does a change in administration change your company modeling, change your programs? And I will tell you that we, as a small company, we are well tied to all the political levels as much as we possibly can to learn as much as we can as far out as we can. When the government changes, oh, okay, well, to answer your question, is it different now than it was when we started? Yes, vastly different. It's more complicated in the compliance side of things. We have to have more insurance, more certifications, more clearances, more boxes to check. But because of the contract vehicles, because of the expediency with which the government is being mandated to spend money. Now, remember, we're defense. It's a $1.3 trillion defense budget. The current administration has mandated that we must spend the money.
Mm.
So the typical GSA rounds, RFP rounds, FAR rounds, even SIBR, STTR have all been deemed slow and clunky. The OTA, the other transactional authority, has become like the new favorite because,
Hmm.
especially in our case, I can't speak for everybody, but the OTA that we're on is a 12-week obligation process, which compared to our Army programs, which were standard RFPs, those are 20 months compared to 3. I mean, it's night and day. And even then, the amount of paperwork and response to the government is just exponentially more for the standard FAR as opposed to the OTA requirement.
Is it worth it for a small size company to go after these projects and go through all the work of getting compliant?
I mean, it's a loaded question. It's yes, no. It depends on what your objective really is. We didn't set out to be defense. That wasn't what the company was founded on doing. It just happened to go this way. We happened to be
Yeah.
good at it. And so I would tell people, if you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, I'm going to be a defense contractor, well, good luck with that. Unless
Yeah.
you've got friends on the inside, unless you have a contract vehicle in mind, unless you have a program or an advocate inside the system that wants a thing that you are making, you're going to run face first full speed to a brick wall over and over and over again. Now, is it worth it? I mean, it's a yes, no for me personally. I love the work and the work that we do is very noble and the work that we do supports people that we legitimately care about. As a business owner, the stress is considerable because not
Mm.
only are you worried about your normal day to day stressors like HR and payroll and insurance requirements, but you're also worried about the weapon systems that you're working on in the hands of American citizens. God forbid you miss something and the thing detonates before it's supposed to. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of stuff that's baked in on both sides. I personally love it and wouldn't change it, but I'm a very unique character. And
Hmm.
coming from somebody who used to hang in trees and count eggs in birds' nests and pick up snakes with their bare hands, because that's what we were doing, to now being an expert in autonomous combat, I wouldn't change it because I don't know any different. Is it
Right.
worth it? I think so.
The assumption is that like government projects are, if you can win them, they're great to have because government usually has budget for projects, right?
Well, that would be the thought. It's not always
Yeah.
true. And sometimes I have to find the money. Sometimes the money can be taken away. Sometimes
Yeah.
the program can be halted. And again, especially right now, this current administration, like when it, like Trump v. 1, was very erratic and very chaotic. Now we're lucky that because we're small, and we didn't really come into the defense space until Trump v. 1. Yes, we were doing subcontract work, but we were getting very light touch in 2012 to 2016. We really jumped into it. We won our first Prime Award in 2021. So we only know this
Mhm.
kind of approach. We don't have the muscle memory that L3 Harris and Raytheon and Northrop Grumman of legacy defense engagement of these many, many year-long programs. We only know this. And
Mhm.
so for us, we've been able to make it work. Does it come with its own costs? Absolutely. But again, it's good work if you can get it.
What do you think founders are focusing on today that might not matter 5 years from now?
God, if I'm taking a big leap here, I think it's the implementation of AI.
I knew you were gonna say that.
And here's my thinking. It's now remember, I'm an educator. I taught grad and undergrad for 10 years, from 2010 to 2020. So I saw, I don't know, hundreds of students leave my class and then go into the real world. And some of them would come back to take grad school and so on. They The implementation of AI, as somebody who has been doing autonomous combat since 2012, I've been doing this for 14 years. My
Mhm.
R&D lead, he and I laugh whenever we see these big flashing AI ads because we're looking at each other going, where the hell has everybody been? This is old news. We've been doing dummy AI work for a decade and change. This is nothing new to us. We're very fluent in all of this. And granted, the modeling now is way more sophisticated than it ever was,
Yeah.
but right now it's currently in vogue. It's the big new shiny flashy thing, right? The real concern that I have, and I spread this among other owners, is that I understand the implementation of AI seems like a great idea for saving money. If you
Mhm.
treat it like a tool in the toolbox and not the whole box, you'll
Mhm.
do better. The issue is that I look at myself, I'm 43. My staff ranges, from the early 20s straight through the mid 70s. And it is my responsibility to start training the next generation of professionals. If the next generation of professionals doesn't exist because it's all AI, well, then there's going to be no one to do my job when
Yeah.
it comes time for me to retire. And I see friends of mine who have sold their businesses and they're in their 60s and 70s who have sold it to guys my age who are implementing, you know, full AI bots without a lot of what structured past performance experienced personnel. And so I think the pendulum is going to have to swing a little further in one direction before it swings back fully. And I get really concerned that the short-term gains on AI, which in my humble opinion is still rather experimental for
Yeah.
large-scale implementation, I think is going to end up being to our detriment as a whole. And I mean, and I could expand upon this, reminiscing of when I used to teach. What my students were complaining about when my last course I taught was right before COVID kicked off. So, like 6 years ago at this point. If students feel as if they're not going to have a job coming out of college because the rudimentary skills that they should be developing are going to be done by AI in one capacity or another, they're simply not going to try. And so there will be no, I'm CEO now, but I've got directors of operations, technical services, programs, and intelligence, and they have their own staff that support them. I can't begin to tell you our hiring process for the slots we had to fill at Picatinny Arsenal. We had to go through 64 candidates because there's just the pool from which with to draw is getting it smaller. And on the flip side, I know students who have submitted over 200 applications
Mm.
and can't get entry level jobs.
See, I have this thing, right? Like I'm in tech and I get AI, I'm 46 and I remember the days when AI was just machine learning, but we didn't really call it AI, right? And now you have AI that is obviously way more sophisticated, can really do a lot of modeling and do a lot of work around data. But like I personally don't believe that AI is going to replace us yet. I don't think we're there. I think and this is just my own personal opinion, I think
Mhm.
that the people who don't learn how to properly use AI or refuse to use it will get left behind because, like you said, AI is going to be part of the toolbox. And if you don't implement it, and if you go into a company that has that as part of their toolbox and implementation, and you don't know how to use it, you're not going to be able to get that job. I remember when at my company, I made it like I enforced AI and I told everybody, like, whenever you do your job, use AI. There's different parts, and we had to put practices in place. But I literally had to force some of my staff to like start using AI because it is part of our toolbox. And the only reason it's part of our toolbox is because it saves time instead of, going and spending 3 hours verifying or checking against doing research and checking against hundreds of models of data. You can get it done in 5 seconds. So the whole purpose of it is to like bring in, help, to bring in
Mhm.
help for so I don't think we're fully there yet. I think, yeah, eventually that'll happen. But I think right now we're at the core of individuals who don't take the time to learn it are going to slowly start losing those jobs because it's going to be part of the toolbox.
I think therein lies the rub. I use my old man as a really good example. My father's 75, is retired. Excuse me. At his peak, he was a VP of marketing and sales for print and advertising.
Yeah.
And I mean, he could sell ice to an Eskimo. He was the famous, the sell me this pen, right?
Yeah.
And in the 2000 and 2002, 4, 6, 8, I remember the conversations I was having with my father, telling him about the advent of the internet and what was coming and what was going to happen. And he poo-pooed it. No, 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 that'll never happen. Blah blah blah. And sure enough, his business. Not that he was the owner, but his entire industry collapsed almost virtually overnight in 2008, in along with the housing bubble and or the housing market, excuse me. And even to this day, his he has an iPhone, mostly because we made him get but it's basically a very pretty brick. He uses it as a paperweight, and he's still that mindset. He turns his phone off at night and leaves it on the shelf, and I'm like, "Dad." So, like case in point, like over the weekend, I happen to check my tracker, and he's in Canada. Doesn't tell anybody that he's in Canada. So I call my father in a panic, thinking that either his phone got stolen, or I mean, it doesn't matter. Your parent leaves the country, doesn't tell you,
Yeah. Yeah. You panic.
you panic. And instead of answering the question as to why he's in Canada, or even verifying that he's in Canada for starters, he starts asking questions in response. Well, how did you know? What do you mean my phone has a tracker on? Why do you have my phone tracker? I'm like, are you in Canada? Yes. Okay. Why? We're at the falls. Okay. Did you tell anybody? No. Was I supposed to? Yeah. Like, I'm being punished for what I was like as a kid, I guarantee.
Yeah, yeah.
But my point standing is that the accumulation of knowledge over time is wisdom
Yeah.
in the long term, and that includes technology and skill sets. What I am advise against is putting all your eggs in the basket of the newest and the shiny.
Yeah.
Being the tail end of Gen X, we are naturally skeptical towards any new technology because we're the last bastion of growing
Yeah.
up in the analog and the digital footprints, right? We know what
Yeah.
both sides are like. And so I'm much more adept at a slow adoption of technology, and I'd rather wait it out until all the glitches are out of the system
Yeah.
before buying it. And I was recently at an AI summit at NJIT, hundreds of vendors, a lot of student programs, and it was really something. And what I kept hearing for people was, that this is still somewhat locked in corporate offices and labs. And that's not a bad thing. It just seems to be where it lives the most. And I said to my wife, me personally, I'm not interested in having AI in our home until it can make dinner, take out the garbage, do the cat box, do the things that I don't want to do. I don't want AI making songs and art because that's the stuff I want to do. I want
Yeah.
to offload, picking up
This
poop out
yeah. Yeah.
so that I can sit and paint all day.
Yeah.
So,
For
and,
sure.
and I think that that's really going to be where once people get to the point where it's the AI is less of a threat to their job survivability and more of a tool in the toolbox to make your life easy.
Yeah.
But then again, at the same time, there's also an invasive nature to it. There's no reason why my dishwasher needs to be on Wi-Fi. There's no reason why it
No.
needs to have a screen in it. And
Yeah.
so, and even the grill, I was looking at a new grill at Lowe's, and it's telling me it's got both 5G and Wi-Fi connectivity. Well, in case you want to monitor the meat from, inside, why would you leave a fire going and step away?
Well, I mean, look, I think that, like, this is my own personal opinion. I think that, like, I hope that as people and the companies making these technologies, I hope we learned from our past mistakes. And I think social media is a really good example of here's someone who came up with an idea, but we did not know the impact of social media 10, 20 years down the road and how people are addicted to their phones because of social media. And, it has had some pros, but it's also had a lot of cons to it.
Mhm.
So I would hope that, as companies, we are more aware of the types of technologies that we're bringing, and that, like you said, maybe we're adopting it slower so that we can learn, so that in the next 20 years, we're not a bunch of robots walking around that can't think for ourselves. There's that. But I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen because now technology is moving faster than ever. Every 3, 6 months, you have a new tool, Gentic AI. So I think it's going to be hard to not keep up with it. And I think it's going to be, I think in a couple of years, we're going to see effects of moving so quickly, just like we did with cell phones, and people can't even have a conversation with having a cell phone beside them. Like you, when I go to my parents' house, they have cell phones, but they still have a home phone. And the other day I was there and the home phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was
Yeah.
my uncle calling my mom, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is such a weird feeling," right? But yeah, so hopefully we learned something. I don't know.
And this is where I talk about the pendulum swinging back and forth. I mean, even recently, social media is a great example. Meta and YouTube just lost
Yeah.
their very first civil case, which is a watershed moment because there are 1,600 other cases behind them.
Yeah.
And I just finished reading the book, The Anxious Generation. The author was a subject matter expert testifying witness in that case. And my wife is a middle school music teacher, and she's been teaching for 15 plus years. So she has seen kids from ages 8 straight through. Now they have children of their own. And when we were dating in 2016, she told me what my students were going to be like. And she was absolutely right. And
Mm,
so, now social media is having somewhat of its own comeuppance. The pendulum is starting to swing back the other way because the regulations, which were written in the late 90s, are finally starting to catch up.
yeah.
And part of that is the fact that we've got octogenarians in Congress, but that's a whole other story. Laws are slow to change without a lot of individualized community support. And
Yeah.
I think the same is going to be with social media. The same is going to be with AI. And I think it's going to be quite a while before we've got a really perfect, and perfect is a very generalized term here, but a workable solution. To
Yeah.
your point, it may not even matter because what we're trying to work with now will be obsolete in the not too distant future. And so, it's a very scary time, especially me as a parent. To what advice? I mean, my oldest is 5, so we don't even need to have a conversation about his future for another decade and change. But the advice that I was given by my parents, it didn't even hold water for 20 years, let alone the entirety of
Yeah.
my career. So it's a very, when I say scary, scary is too big of a word for it. It's a very anxiety inducing time. So there's a lot of folks that just kind of, we're just going to wait and see what happens here. Now, the
Yeah.
interesting part about us as a firm, we've been doing AI and autonomy since we were founded. So this is nothing new
Yeah.
to us. We were very lucky to have been an early adopter, and having that early adopter edge for us has allowed us to be way out in front of a lot
Mhm.
of what's going on. And now that there's, not to say competitors coming up around us, but we're being sourced in to other companies that need our expertise in their AI implementation because we've been doing it simply for so long.
So we're coming up on time, but before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you one last question. How should founders think about building a career that creates long-term impact rather than just chasing short-term wins?
You have to do both. You
Mm,
absolutely have to. My biggest recommendation is figure out what you want your life to look like. It could be very nebulous, very vague terms, right? But figure what you want your life to look like. and then work backwards. Come up with a series of realistic milestones that you can set that will move you along that path. Right? It's got to be a marathon of baby steps. It cannot
Hmm.
be just in one foul swoop, right? And it's an incorporation of education and exposure and thick skin and 16-hour commitment. If you're going to be a business owner, you have to operate with not commitment, but with conviction. My first wife did not understand that. She called the company the other woman. Phone would ring and I'd be on it. My current wife, she's like, "Just go, bye, go to work." And so, if you are looking for object permanence, you'll never find it. The object that so the company for me, when I started it, was always intended to be an asset that was going to give me, my family, my children the kind of lifestyle that I wanted for them. That's it. If I could make money watching cartoons all day, I would do that, but I can't, so we don't. Money kept coming from the DoD, so we'll do that.
Yeah.
So, the short-term wins, you have to have them in order to be the building blocks because you need money to survive, you need past performance, you need clients, you need the whole roster of capabilities and contracts and. But you have to have long-term goals. And sometimes those long-term goals, they kind of manifest out of left field. Our first Navy award, I didn't even know what it was supposed to be, what it was called. We won it in 21. We submitted it in 2019, and I was made aware of it in 2017 because a client of mine and a friend said, "You need this thing called a seaport." I said, "What the hell is a seaport?" He goes, "I don't know." So I looked it up, and then you have to go through the application process, and you have to get the necessary compliance components, and you just have to keep moving on it. And so, a big piece of advice for any founders and owners is listen. The dragon's going to be there every day, whether you're ready to fight it or not. You may as
Yeah.
well get up, get shaved, showered, dressed, have a cup of coffee, and be ready to fight the dragon at the door because they're going to be there, whether you're ready to or not. And honestly, if this kind of mentality is not for you, and if it's not, that's okay. Some people need the 9 to 5 boundary box. Some people
Yeah.
have that. And a very good friend of mine who was a client at his old job, and now he might be a new client again in his new job. He's a very highly sought after commodity. I advised him to start a company and consult. And he said, "Nope, not for me." Fair.
Fair.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, my advice to founders is be flexible. Learn when to say yes, learn when to say no. And if you're wrong on something, be the first one to put your hand up and say, "I don't know, but I will find out." It's
Yeah.
okay to not be all things to all people as you get further along. It's okay to divorce yourselves from problematic customers and hire a good team around you as you are able to do so because you will get caught up in the minutia. And
Hmm.
listen, and I'm in the middle of a lawsuit against a former executive who embezzled $1 million away from me. I still have to
Mm.
fight that fight.
Yeah.
And so you have to be cognizant that all the balls are still going to be in the air and you are one object away from utter failure. So,
Yeah.
um, but again, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's not, I wouldn't start now before this. That's for damn sure. I got a mortgage, I got kids, I got daycare costs.
Yeah.
I'm glad I started it when I did. I wouldn't do it now.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and all your insights into a very specific industry. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, anybody can look us up, nomadics.com. We're not the backpack people. We're not the towel people. Nomad ICS, Intelligent Consulting and Strategy. Come find me on LinkedIn. I love to talk, clearly. So any questions you have, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Put all your information on the links.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. I want to thank Nick for joining me today. One of the strongest patterns in this conversation is that longevity is built through disciplined evolution. Companies that last are not rigid, they are structured. Leaders who operate in complex environments develop the ability to adapt without losing standards, and that stability becomes a strategic advantage over time. A takeaway here is define the standards your business will not compromise under pressure and build systems that protect those standards as the company evolves. And that's a wrap. Thank you for joining me on this journey of learning and growth. If this episode resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building through a challenge right now. You can also connect with us on social media and be part of a community that believes resilience is the real advantage. Remember, growth isn't linear. Success isn't guaranteed, and setbacks are part of the process. What matters is how you execute. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, keep chasing your dreams with tenacity.